Our guest today was born and raised in Wausau, Wisconsin. He is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin and earned his law degree there. He is also a Kennedy School of Government scholar. Mayor Daley calls him, and I quote, "a valued partner in making Chicago the best that it can be." Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the City Club of Chicago the Alderman and Committeeman of the 42nd Ward, Burton Natarus. Alderman, have some fun up here.
This is my fourth time back, and I had to do it because my colleague Bernie Stone, who's an expert on small lots, spoke at the political science class of Tom Roser. And so I had to come back and talk to you about large lots. And I'm glad Roser isn't here. I know it. Roser, are you here? No, he's not here. I was told I have to be careful what I say because there are so many of Mayor Daley's spies in the audience that I better really be careful. But I can get away with this one. It seems that the husband and wife were in Jerusalem touring, and she died. And the undertaker came up to the husband and says, "Listen, I'll give you a deal. $150 will bury her in holy soil. Father, please forgive me." And for $5,000, we'll ship her to the United States. He says, "I'll ship her to the United States." And he said, "Well, why would you do that?" He says, "Many years ago, there was a man that was buried here and rose after 3 days." Is that all right, Father? I am very pleased to be here, and I'm very, very pleased that you came here to listen to this 90-minute ad lib, which this year becomes a little more sophisticated because I've been associated with a number of years with the Haymarket Group with Tom Coffey, and I have Jill Pinkowski here who said to me that we have to have some slides to sophisticate and clean up my my presentation. Chicago is a very, very important city, not because we who sit here think so, but it really is. Now, I don't know how many of you have read the Burnham Plan. You know, Burnham was sort of a hog. He didn't tell you that there was another fella that also wrote the plan with him by the name of Edward Bennett. Have you ever heard of Edward Bennett? No. Burnham was a hog, and he said it was the Burnham Plan, but it was written also by Edward Bennett. Now, the Burnham Plan is a very interesting book. The only people who want to read it is they want to take that famous quote, you know, "make no little plans" and all that. You know, they want to be sophisticated with the audience, but they have never read the plan. And if you've read the plan, and I was very, very pleased in 1996, in order to educate me, my staff bought me a very, very sophisticated copy of the plan for me to read so that I would become a better alderman and make them, you know, so they could be proud of me, see. So I've read the book, and if you read the book, you'll find out that Burnham took over half of the book to show you what other cities have done. And our city really matches the planning framework of many of the cities, the great cities. I don't mean New York. The great cities. New York is a sloppy job of planning. No alleys. The point of the matter, that's why they have garbage. The point of the matter is that it's the whole idea of the thing is to look at the city as a circle and have radiating streets or pathways or what have you go out in all of the different directions. Now, Chicago is that way, and Chicago has the advantage that we have a great river, we have a great lake, and we have great people. Now, if you are interested in what I'm talking about, you have to develop a mindset. I mean, either you have the mindset that you want to develop a city and you want to develop a central part of the city as to the key of activity. If you don't accept that principle, then please walk out the door. Because I'm not interested, nor are the planning department, I'm told, interested in urban sprawl. If you don't have a mindset that you want to create the emphasis of planning in the central city, then you're going to end up with urban sprawl. You're going to end up, you ever go to Phoenix? Interesting. I'm there on one vacation. I paid for it by myself. I did. I went to Phoenix. I'm standing on the top of a hill, and I'm learning how to play golf. So after losing a box of balls, I'm with the manager, who was a real pro, and he skunked me pretty good. He says, "Look down below." I says, "What?" He says, 6 blocks away we have houses. You call this a mountain retreat? Absolutely not. And that's what's happening with Phoenix. And I understand that the Phoenix city fathers and mothers are now gathering together on how to build the central part of the city. Look at LA. What an example of sprawl. You don't know whether you're going from LA to San Diego as you drive down the highway. So I'm trying to say to you is we have to have a mindset of developing the central city in terms of population. I'm following you, Jill, real nice. The population, business, and transportation. Now, if you do that, and you're able to emphasize the central part of the city, then you can have a real economic and and social and aesthetic hub to operate on, and then you can engage in the rest of your planning. Now, in order to have effective planning, to the chagrin of all of the lawyers here who represent, I know they're interested in a lot of zoning lawyers here are interested in some quick answers, which they're not going to get. But anyhow, the key to planning really is zoning. And Chicago has always had a very, very effective zoning mechanism. We started in the 20s. In fact, Herbert Hoover, who coincidentally was a Republican, gave us an award because we were one of the first cities in the United States to adopt a zoning ordinance. And then we had a mass revision of that ordinance in 1957 with a very, very fine real estate man who devoted an awful lot of effort working with Richard J. Daley with regard to the 1957 revision. His name was Harry Chaddock. Now, we have 3 ordinances that are very, very important to this city. Number 1, we have a plan development ordinance. The plan development ordinance was adopted in the 70s. And the purpose of the plan development ordinance was that when you had larger projects, you could pass an ordinance which gives you some flexibility. That is, we would have the idea of mixed use was born as a result of that, having residential and having business and even social agencies combined on one lot. And so if you have a project of a certain size, you have to go through the plan development procedure. If you have a smaller project, you can elect to, and there are a lot of advantages of doing that, because by adopting a plan development for your project, you have a little more flexibility. And of course, you have the smile and gratitude of the planning department, who of course will help you in all ways if you do what they tell you. But the point of the most zoning, I didn't mean to be facetious, but I was. The point of the matter is, a smart developer always looks to the plan development because of some of the things that you can do, and both from a profit point of view and from an aesthetic point of view. Another ordinance that was passed in the 70s, and we were forced to pass it because we weren't too sharp and we didn't see the handwriting on the wall, but the state of Illinois threatened us that if we didn't do something to protect the lakefront and pass an ordinance such as that, we would we would have our jurisdiction diminished. So I was on the committee with Bernie Stone, and that was, of course, an impossible situation. But Lou Hill put us in our place, and we enacted a lakefront ordinance. And the lakefront ordinance is not a zoning ordinance. It's a building permit ordinance. And so that there's a strip along Lake Michigan, so many feet from Lake Michigan, called a private sector. And if you want to build in there, you have to have a special hearing in front of the Plan Commission. Then further toward the lake, there is the public zone, which includes all the parks. And if you want to build something in there, you have to have a plan development. And then, of course, there's the lake. And, of course, nobody's allowed to build anything in the lake. And I hope they're not here, but Loyola found that out by accident. Anybody from Loyola? Poor thing. That was years ago. We still love you. Remember that? Remember that lawsuit? Well, you know. But anyhow, that turned out all right. We're very protective of the lake. We're very protective of our public sector. We went into an awful lot of difficulty with the erection of all of the museums. And there are some watchdogs. We have Friends of the Park and many other organizations that don't want anything built there. And of course, we ran into the biggest squabble of all time, which was finally settled in the courthouse with the redoing or the remodeling of Soldier Field. So there were some exceptions. People are still angry at government for it. But we need Soldier Field now in light of the fact that we are particularly in contention for the Super Bowl, as you know, as a result over the weekend. Now, zoning, of course, is a continuing process, and so 3 or 4 years ago, we formed a zoning reform committee, and it consisted not only of government officials, elected officials, but we had citizens on that committee, and we wrote a new zoning ordinance. And it's a very complicated ordinance. The people that drafted it led us to believe it was going to be simple to follow because they put in a chart system. And they did that to get back at the alderman because they know that in order to amend an ordinance, to try to amend a chart is very difficult. So you got to go see them in order to get the plates. But anyhow, that's a long story. But anyhow, you can see this ordinance and you can get it. It's www.cityofchicago.org zoning, and it would behoove you to see it because it's quite a masterpiece of secret activity. Now, so we have that, and we have effective planning, and we're continually to emphasize the central part of the city. So we also formed another group called the Central Area Planning Committee, and many of you in this room may be on it. We thought that the Loop deserved certain attention, so we created a central planning area for the Loop. It's not a zoning ordinance, and it doesn't have the effect of an ordinance in terms of legality, but it does have certain planning concepts in it. And we also have within that area different zoning symbols and different zoning classifications. Now, to give you an example of why that was important, we have found out that if we're going to attract corporations, and you know that my emphasis here of trying to build up and emphasize the central part of the city more than anything else, and we'll talk about the neighborhoods a little later. We're not going to cheat them, believe me. We won't get away with it. The point of the matter is, that's true. The point of the matter is that the corporations wanted access to transportation. So we revised the zoning ordinance, and it's gotten to the point now where most of the offices now are moving to the west side of the Loop. Why? They're near the Dan Ryan, and they're near the train station, and they have access, therefore, to transportation. And by having that access to that transportation, of course, they have access to O'Hare Field. And so that was a very, very good move. In fact, now we're faced with another problem where we're having developers and building owners coming to us and say, look, the offices are moving to the west side. What do we do with our buildings now? And so we have a complicated problem of whether or not we should allow them to convert to residential. And that's got its problems. And I can't go into it right now for the simple reason that it's not easy to change these planned developments and these zoning regulations just to convert it to residential when they were able to obtain certain benefits as a result of building a commercial building. But we'll have to work that out. We have a Central Area Planning Committee that we're, did I say something wrong, sir? Well, since you're leaving early, I meant it. Anyhow, so we have both, I'm not that big of a wise guy, just having a little fun. Anyhow, the government, we have government participation and citizen participation there. Now, what about these developers, these evil people? Well, they're not evil. First of all, whether we like it or not, or whether we want to admit it or not, money talks. And money is the gasoline for development. If you don't have money, if you don't have investments, if you don't have loans, you don't have banks that are willing to pay the money, you're not going to have any kind of development whatsoever. So what we do in order to get the amenities that we need is we have, by the way, you can't have an exaction. An exaction, the Supreme Court says, is when you come up to a developer and says, you better build me a park or you can't build a building. Can't do that. The Supreme Court says no. But what we have is trade-offs. And that means for somebody with the plan, especially with the plan development mechanism, somebody says, I want to put 3 more floors on. They say, fine, build us a park. Okay? Or they want 3 or 4 more floors, and they would say, I'd like it. And they say, well, fine, contribute a couple of $1 million to the Affordable Housing Fund. That's the trade-off. Or now we have an education one. We have an education one where if they want to build a tall building, a very tall building, they can give to the Affordable Housing Program, and they can give to an education fund, which is building up slowly. We have $12 million now in the Affordable Housing Program, and which means that of people who want to build out in the neighborhoods, affordable housing, or even downtown affordable housing, can apply for this money to help them, to subsidize them for building affordable housing. Now, I don't have to tell you this. I know most of you have rather fancy $1 million apartments, but let me tell you something, that one of the biggest problems we have in this town, if we're going to keep people here, is reasonable affordable housing. And we've got to be able to build it. And we've got to have it. That's where the neighborhoods come in. And we have another problem downtown here. I don't know if you know this or not, but we have a number of buildings here that are HUD financed, and they were on 15 and 20-year programs where there's affordable housing. For example, there's affordable housing in 445 East Ohio. There was affordable housing in 100 West Chestnut. There's affordable housing in 1150 North Dearborn. Now, what happens when these federal programs diminish or disappear? What then? The developer or the owner will come in and put in regular economic apartments, regular economic priced apartments. And the people who were living there that can't afford those apartments will have to move out. And where do they go? So one of the things that I'm working on with HUD is I'm trying to extend some of those locations. And naturally, that's where the Democratic votes are. But anyhow, you didn't get that. I shouldn't have said that, should I have, Tom? Can I strike that? Forget I said that. No, but no, the social policy is more important than the politics. The fact of the matter is that if we don't have any affordable housing down in the central city, we're negating a very, very important social policy. We've got to have housing for all people of all kinds of incomes. Now, what's on the horizon is the mayor has sponsored a new ordinance which will allow for the participation if you build affordable housing up to 10% of your project, or if you contribute a certain amount of money to the affordable housing program, you'll be able to build. So we're working on that so we can get some affordable housing out in the neighborhoods. Now, what are some of the other trade-offs that we've had? Well, I don't mind bragging about this. I don't know if you look at the golf course, where the golf course used to be, East Lake Shore Drive. The developer was required to build a park. That park is a public park. He's also required to build a school over there. So that was the trade-off with regard to that. That same developer, by the way, gave several $1,000s to building the fountain at Bughouse Square. MCL built a park. MCL is a developer over on Illinois and Grand. They were required to build a park. And we can go on and on and on as to where we've required developers to do certain things in terms of building parks, building schools, contributing to the affordable housing program as trade-offs. And we use these incentives as a means of achieving some of these. Now, the next thing that we're doing is this. We have sort of a think tank. We have nothing else to do, so we sit there and commemorate. But we find it very helpful to sit down for an hour with people who want to volunteer their time and interested to come up with ideas. And we have a very, very, very fine gentleman who came here from San Francisco that's been exploring an idea for us that we can get more open space if we build taller buildings. So, and rather than building boxes, huge boxes, lot line to lot line, we're now asking people to build Roman candles and thin buildings, taller buildings. And that's the way we think we can get more open space. And of course, the latest of that is Calatrava. Calatrava is coming on the scene now. It's a huge building. It's probably going to be one of the tallest buildings in the world, 2,000 feet. It's like a Roman candle, and it'll be built near Lakeshore Drive. And of course, the mayor is in favor of it because I think it'll put Chicago on the map. If you think that Calatrava is a minor player in the architect field, go up to Milwaukee and see the Milwaukee Art Museum. It's just gorgeous. And so Calatrava and his developer, Kelleher, have been in to see me and talk to me, and they say they're definitely going ahead. No ifs or buts about it, but we have some worries about it. We may think it's too large. They want to increase the number of apartments to 500, and we're going to have to think about that a little bit. Now, what do we do with the buildings downtown that are old? We have a landmark ordinance. The landmark ordinance is rather strict. They don't designate just anything. It has to have historic, cultural, architectural value. Many people come to me and they say, well, listen, they're going to tear down that building. Don't tear it down. It's a landmark. And I go to the Landmark Commission and I have to rely on them for help in terms of advice because I'm not an architect, far be it from me. I don't even know what a football looks like. But the point of the matter is they give me the advice and I have to go by their advice. And if they're not willing to landmark the building, where are we going? So the problem with landmarking is once you landmark a building, then what do you do to keep it up? Now, I have some buildings that the public wanted landmarked up on Dearborn Street, and they're real drags. They're terrible. and all of them are in building court. And you ask the developer, well, you know, it's a landmark building, keep it up. They said, I can't afford it. So what do we do? How do we handle those problems? Well, we have a couple of methods. Number one, we can use TIF money to give them assistance. And that was the purpose, by the way, of the very controversial, which I don't think is controversial at all, expansion of the LaSalle Street TIF. I don't know if you know what's happening to LaSalle Street, but LaSalle Street is not as productive as it used to be. People are moving out of there. They're going into a different direction. And the developers and the owners have said to me, what do we do with those buildings? How do we keep it up? Well, that's why we create the TIF district. And my prediction is that we're going to see another lady walked out mad. I must have said something about her religion or something. She just walked out mad. Maybe she's going to get a drink. But anyhow, we have to have a means of keeping those buildings up. And my prediction is that area is going to be for hotels. We have 3 or 4 people who are all interested in building hotels on LaSalle Street, and we just cannot let LaSalle Street fail. It's so much a part of Chicago history, and the buildings are very, very meaningful. Some of them are landmarks. If we're going to keep the buildings up, we have to figure out a way of financing them, and the best way to do that is the TIF district. There's another way we do it, and that is the Class L, where we give somebody a tax break for so many years. But some people have said to us, well, what good does it do to give me a tax break and delay the taxes for so many years at a lower rate when I don't have money to finance the building? It goes to show what you can do with a building that you don't think has of any value. When I took over that area of the ward, I looked at that building with a big smokestack, and I says, what in the world was that? And that's the old Northwestern Powerhouse. And I says to myself, well, what are we going to do with that building? Well, somebody came along to me and said to me, look, we would like to make that an office building for our architects. And we would like to put a glass roof on top. And I went along with that because I thought that was the only way to preserve the building. But then the national people, they said you can't put the glass roof up there. So they just finished remodeling that, and they're having offices in there, and they're going to have a restaurant down below, and they light up the smokestack, and it's really nice. It's the powerhouse in the River North District. That's where you're able to get the developers, give them a little incentive with the Class L and what have you, and you end up with some very, very nice buildings. Of course, we have some great architecture. You see what we've done with Millennium Park. You see what we're doing with the Trump Building. You see what we're doing with 400 Lakeshore Drive. You see what Renzo Plano is doing with the Art Institute. And so we are famous for our architecture, and we take a backseat to no one. Now, how are we going to create a good environment downtown if we're going to have all this building? Hey, listen, I'll wait for you. I don't want you to drop it, hey. Are you okay? Are you all right? Need help? No? All right. Anyhow, we think, and Mayor Daley is a big champion of this. In fact, I had a very funny experience with Mayor Daley in one of my few encounters with him. He invites me to the Cultural Center to look at the green roof. So we go up there, and we're walking around, and we got all these plants and he says, I want to show you something. I says, what? We have honey. I says, what do you mean honey? They have beehives up there. I says, Mr. Mayor, I said, this is crazy. Don't you say that one of my ideas is crazy. But they got beehives up there, really, on the Cultural Center. And I use this to illustrate the fact that we need more greenery. And that may sound very theoretical to you, but if we can get more greenery here, we can clear the air more. For example, when neighbors who want to come to me and say, I would like to beautify the parkway, I want a permit for that, we don't let them put brick pavers anymore. We would rather have it dirt and don't maintain it. We would rather have dirt and grass there than the pavers, because this helps the air. And we're encouraging that more and more. And of course, we're encouraging the greenery more. You notice how Al Hanna's taking notes over here? See this? You know Al Hanna? Look at him here. Didn't we grow up at Boy Scouts together, Al? Yes, sirree. Yeah, Moseley, Wisconsin. Boy, does it stink up there with that paper mill. Anyhow, we put more and more greenery. Huh? What did he say? Well, Al, they don't let you in Wausau either. So that's part of the city's plan under Mayor Daley. More greenery. We have flower baskets. We have parkways. And I want to give credit to the Greater North Michigan Avenue Association. Don Maxon's here. I don't know if you know this or not, but the Greater North Michigan Avenue merchants have been paying for the beautification of those parkways for over 30 years on a volunteer basis. And right now we're trying to get some funding so we can maintain the parkways and the boulevards better. And we're also, that's another bonus that you can get, by the way. If you're building a building and you put in a green roof, you put plants on the top and trees, you'll have to have a good membrane, of course, otherwise you're going to have leakage. But I'm just saying to you that we encourage that, and you get a bonus for that. Now, the next thing we have to do is worry about energy. And I'm glad ComEd is here, because whether you like ComEd or not, they are our major transportation system for energy in this area. And if our lights are on, and they keep our lights on pretty wonderful. And you have to give them credit for that. But I'm not going to get into the business with the rate change. You can argue with him as he goes out the door. But we've got to do other things. For example, there's a very interesting exhibit down by the courthouse, the Richard J. Center. They've got these wind tunnels. And my grandson, I took my grandson Jacob over there, and he said, "What are those, tops, yo-yos?" I says, "No, Jacob, they're wind tunnels." He says, "Well, what are they?" I says, "They generate energy." And I don't know why we don't take those wind machines and put them on the cribs out in the lake. Put a couple of those things out on the roof and test it and see how much energy they will yield. We ought to take those and line them up along Lake Michigan and take advantage of the wind. And it wouldn't hurt to put one in the city council. There's another thing that we should be doing, it seems to me, and they do this in Maine. Try it out. See if it works. Water wheels. If you've ever stood by the aquarium or some of those buildings there and seen how the lake hits that wall over there, it seems to me that since it's hitting the wall so hard, we could put a paddle wheel in there. After all, the dams up in Wisconsin and on the Illinois River are all paddle wheels to promote electricity. And then, of course, we could put them on the roofs too. Not the paddle wheels, but I mean the wind towers. The final thing that we're doing, and I see where McCormick Place is doing it, solar plates. Solar energy. It's another source of energy that's very, very important. Now, the last topic I think is the most controversial and more important. What are we going to do about congestion? What are we going to do about all these bad drivers? What about Mayor Daley has a wonderful bicycle program, but I says, Mr. Mayor, how can I use my bicycle if they're going to knock me off the bicycle? And on and on and on. That is a picture of 1910 of State and Madison. We haven't improved, have we? And it's not funny. Now, we not only have the problem, go ask the mayor of Schaumburg, go ask the the suburban mayors if they don't have the same traffic problems that we do. It's getting to be a real zoo. And the only answer to the problem is, and I'm glad Steve Schlickman is here, is transit. We've got to use electrical power, and we've got to have more trains. And I said this before till I'm blue in the face. I don't know if the railroad tracks are in good shape, but we could always repair them. We ought to put more trains and transit on the railroad tracks because we wouldn't have to pay for the right-of-way. We could work out a deal with the railroads, we wouldn't have to condemn land, and we could have a transportation system, and more people would use mass transit if it was good and efficient and effective. And we've got to get to that point. They have it in Europe, they have it in many of the other countries of the world, but of course, they have the advantage we don't. Mass transit throughout the world is paid for by the government, and we don't have that kind of a system here. Trying to get money from the federal government, trying to get money from the state of Illinois is just an impossible situation. But you know, in Europe, they have a high gas tax. And in Europe, the national governments there build and pay for the railroads. I do know this, when Congress wanted to build itself a subway system, they sure did, and they did it fast. But in order for us to save ourselves from being strangled, we're going to have mass transit. Now, you've heard about the Carroll Street cut, wonderful. We could use Lower Wacker Drive, wonderful. But if we don't have the programs, it won't help. We've got Trump all hipped up by putting a transportation center down below the Trump Tower. But I don't see anything happening in terms of carrying out that program. I do see the state of Illinois widening the tollways. They're getting wider and wider and wider. And I always think it's very, very interesting. You ride up into Wisconsin and some of these other states and they don't have tollways. I wonder why they were able to build all those highways. But I think what it is they've got senators up there that get to be pains in the neck to certain administrations. Like this guy Proxmire used to have the Golden Fleece Award. I think he was the Golden Fleece. I said, you want me to stop talking on television about you? Fine, give me another $5 million. And I think maybe that's what happened. As far as O'Hare Field is concerned, Rosie's doing a wonderful job. There are people who like to throw stumbling blocks in her way, you know, but she's tough, and we'll have the finest and continue to have the finest airport in the world. Now, leaving that note, I have to tell you that is no one in the world can top Chicago in terms of location. If you look at the globe, and I don't care which globe you buy, if you look at the globe, well, there's Reploge, there's Random Alley, you know, there's National Geographic, you know, different globes, you know. If you don't want to spend much money, go out to Sister. Reploge makes them out there. I broke a globe once and I went out there and got a cheap globe. But anyhow, the light didn't work inside, but that's another issue. The point is, we are the exact center of the world. Everybody should come here. Everybody. Whether you want to come in here and go out, whatever have you. Whether you want to do business here, whether you want to live here, or you want to play here. There's a lot of play activity here. You know, this is the center of the world. And what we have to do is we have to market it. And we can't have order takers anymore doing this. We have to be people that will go on the road. We ought to give them expense accounts and go on the road and sell Chicago like you sell shoes. You got to sell Chicago. It's great. I'll tell you what, I walk down the street and all I see is this. Now, who are those people looking up in the air like that? They're tourists. They're tourists. They love this town. It's a clean city. If you find paper, Mayor Daley will yell at you. If you ask our ward superintendents, he yells at them if there's paper on the floor. It's a clean city. It's a nice city. It's a pleasant city. And I don't know what we have to do to draw people here, but everybody knows what I want to come to Chicago, and I'm going to keep working on it, is I want Cirque du Soleil to come to Chicago. I'd like to see them have a permanent home. And somebody, I know Lou Raisin will build it for them. Lou, are you here? Did I commit you to some money? Anyhow, Lou Raisin, who just rebuilt the LaSalle Theater, is willing to build another theater for them. And if we had Cirque du Soleil here, it would be a great idea. Gambling, I don't know. We'll see what happens with gambling. The problem with gambling, if we do need it, I don't know where the legislature will give it to us. But it would help. It would help. Not that I'm a big gambler or believe in gambling, but it'll help. Now, there's another, I forgot another topic. The other thing we have to do is we have to develop our river. And the river is being developed really nice. And I got a little insight for you. We found a developer who's gonna, I hope. And since they came in and announced it to everybody, it's no secret, they're gonna build a big office building over on Fulton Street. And the trade-off is they have to build us a park, cover up the railroad tracks, and they're gonna build us a boathouse. Now, if I can get out on a boat with the Coast Guard and measure the amount of wake that the barges from the material service, when they come out at 1 and 2 in the morning, they measure the wake, and if the wake is too big, we may not be able to do it. They might destroy the docks. But we have to get out there and measure the wake. So that's another thing that we're working on. We want very, very much to develop the Chicago River. I don't think we'll ever be able to swim there, but at least we can fish there, and at least we can paddle our boats. Now, what are we, if everything takes place like we think, and Chicago becomes the center of the world, and downtown is the center of the city of Chicago, what do we poor people who live here, how are we going to survive? And the word for that is balance. We've got to have balance for people who live downtown. We've got to figure out how we can have businesses and residents living together in a very, very equitable, peaceful way. And it's not necessarily working out that way. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting up some noise cameras. And I'm going to nail those motorcycles if it's the last thing I do. The other thing we have to do is, and I know we have a study, we want to find out the effect of emergency sirens and whether or not they have to be that loud. We've already talked to the streets and sand people that you don't have to use the yellow light all the time. The only time you use the yellow light is if there's an emergency. Now, this quality of life that I'm talking about is very, very important, because one of the things we've found out is that you can hear noise more readily from the roof of a building than you are if you're down on the street. And so we're going to have to figure out how to curb this noise a little bit so that everybody doesn't have to buy these. I don't wish these on anybody. So I think we can do all these things because I think Chicago has the greatest people like you. You may be a little nuts to come out here and listen to me, but you know, we have a wonderful people. We have people that if you walk down the street and you ask them where to go, what the direction is, not like New York, they don't run away from you here. They'll shake your hand, say, how are you? Welcome to our city, and give you directions. And the other thing that we have to do is we have to get more community involvement. I don't know if you know this or not, all of the developers that come into the downtown area, they have to go see all of the community groups. Ask some of these architects. They spend half their lifetime visiting community groups and talking to them, telling them what they're going to do, and see if there's any adjustments that have to be made. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening to this little diatribe. I appreciate it very much. And help us, all of us here, promote Chicago. Thank you.
Very well done.